TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Cedar Falls wakes before dawn to a brittle chill that seeps into every crack of its clapboard houses. On a narrow lane off Maple Grove Market, the Miller family home stands in faded teal, its porch light sputtering like a tired eyelid. Inside, Catherine Miller has already been up for hours, her shoulders hunched beneath a worn cardigan as she rinses fresh greens at the kitchen sink. Steam curls from the galvanized bucket at her feet, and the rhythmic clink of knives against wood boards is the soundtrack of her daily ritual. Outside, the world is still hushed. Vendors at Maple Grove Market will open their stalls in an hour, but Catherine's stand, a modest spread of squash, kale, and carrots, must be arranged before first light. A pinched crease forms between her brows when she glances at the kitchen clock, 5:12 a.m. Her oldest daughter, Madison Maddie Miller, should already be halfway across town, stocking pastries at Sweet Maple Cafe. Her youngest, 16-year-old Logan, should be riding his bike through the frost towards Cedar Falls High School. But this morning carries the weight of whispers. Richard Miller, Catherine's husband, has failed to show up at the card table once again. A hollow groan echoes from the back bedroom. Catherine pauses her chopping to listen. Every fiber of her being braces for the familiar clatter of bottles and the slurred stomping that follows. She sets down her knife, wipes her hands on her apron, and steps into the dim hallway. "Richard," she calls, voice low. There is no answer, only the rattle of loose emerald curtains in a draft. The knob on their bedroom door quivers as Catherine turns it, easing the door open. Dim light from the hallway lamp reveals empty bottles strewn across the rumpled bed. The mattress sags like a wounded animal. Richard is nowhere to be seen. Her heart thuds. She knows exactly where he'll be. Catherine slips into her coat, tucking a faded photograph of her wedding day, Richard and her, young and radiant, into her breast pocket. It may be the last good memory she has of him. Out on the porch, she breathes the cold air deep and pulls her knitted cap down over her ears. The December sky is a bruised purple. She locks the door, steps onto the creaking porch boards, and crosses the yard toward the alley. At the end, a single street lamp casts a pool of pale light where the Market District meets Jackson Street. That's where the penny poker games draw Richard each night. Sure enough, she finds him seated at a folding table under that yellow glow, cards in hand and a soggy cigarette dangling from his lips. Around him, 3 men in threadbare coats laugh at cheap hands. Catherine approaches, without knocking. "Richard," she says firmly, "we need to go home." He looks up bleary-eyed, and the card he holds falls into his lap. The laughter dies. A cold wind rakes at Catherine's coat. "Not now, Kathy," he slurs. "This hand's mine." She kneels beside him and whispers. "The girls are waiting. Maddie's shift started 20 minutes ago." "Logan." "Logan can take care of himself," he snaps, head lolling back. His eyes narrow. "You worried about them?" Her heart twists.
she's always worried.
She's always the one who bears the weight of the family's survival, patching holes in budgets, bruises on arms, and tears at night. "He's only 16, she says softly. "He needs his bike." Richard snorts. "Let him ride. I ain't stopping him." She squares her shoulders. "If you don't leave now, I will." He laughs, but his eyes are pitted with fear, she knows too well. A man who hates himself can scare himself more than anything else. "Fine," he moans, shoving a handful of crumpled bills onto the table. "I'm going." Catherine stands, collects his hand, and hauls him to his feet. He stumbles and she steadies him, brushing snow from his shoulders as if expecting, hoping he'll apologize. He never does. But she remains patient, her grip firm. When they reach the market parking lot, the sky is paling to slate. Catherine glances at her watch. 5:42 a.m. In 20 minutes, everything here will transform into the vibrant chaos of the morning market. Stall lights flick on, hooves of delivery carts drum against the pavement, and neighbors' greetings echo against storefronts. She guides Richard toward their battered sedan, the engine sputtering awake as she turns the key. He stares at her through the windshield, silent. Catherine closes the door behind him, jabs the heater dial alive, and watches steam fog the glass. As they roll away, he mumbles, "You always do this." She answers without turning, "I always will." 2 blocks later, she passes Sweet Maple Cafe and sees Maddie through the window, kneeling behind the counter, turning on lights and steaming milk. Maddie looks up, spots her mother's car idling outside, and offers a tired half-smile. Catherine's chest tightens. She thinks of the college applications stacked on Maddie's desk, of the dreams her daughter scribbles in a tattered notebook: business school, entrepreneurship, freedom. Then she sees Logan rounding the corner near Cedar Falls High, backpack slung low, breath misting in the cold. He adjusts his helmet with gloved hands and waves. Catherine's pulse steadies. Her life is a daily balancing act, holding her husband's dark spiral at bay while nurturing her children's fragile hopes. The rearview mirror shows Richard's reflection, head lolling to one side, eyes closed. She wonders how long she can keep driving this way before the road ends. Maple Grove Market looms ahead now, stalls bright and welcoming. Catherine kills the engine, turns off the lights, and reaches over to yank Richard's door open. He groans as she helps him out. She stands him beside the car, helping him straighten his coat. "Go wait by the entrance," she tells him. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. He nods once, eyes unfocused. She watches him take unsteady steps toward a row of stalls still loading produce. Catherine grips the steering wheel, finds a breath she can anchor on, and steps out into the day. The sun will rise in an hour, but already the lamps glow golden, promising warmth and new beginnings. She straightens her coat, smooths her hair, and marches to her stall. Because for Catherine Miller, there is no other choice. The market opens at 6, and her family depends on her to be there, come frost or snow or the shadows of her husband's gambling debts. As she sets out her squash and arranges her greens, the first customer, a truck driver from beyond town, approaches, and Catherine greets him by name. In that moment, she becomes more than a battered wife. She is a woman of Cedar Falls, resilient as the frost-hardened earth beneath her feet. And so the day begins. When the first slivers of morning light brush the rooftops of Cedar Falls, Logan Miller's world had already shifted. He pedaled his battered blue bicycle down Elmwood Drive, breath puffing in ragged clouds, mind racing through memories of the day before. Only yesterday, his heart had hammered not from the morning frost, but from something altogether different. A whispered confession. It had started after math class, just as Logan gathered his books at his locker. Taylor Evans, his best friend since 4th grade, stood there, eyes anxious beneath her chocolate-brown bangs. Their lockers touched, each turquoise door flaking paint from years of hallway traffic. Logan's stomach twisted when Taylor offered him a folded piece of paper instead of her usual cheerful grin. "What's this?" he asked softly. Taylor swallowed. Her cheeks were pale behind her freckles. "Read it," she said. "Please." He opened the paper while glancing around the empty corridor. Penciled words tilted unevenly across the page.
Logan, I'm pregnant. I'm so sorry.
I didn't know what to do. I'm meeting Cole today after school. I'm going to keep the baby, but I couldn't face you until I told you myself. The locker door scraped shut behind him. Logan felt as if the entire world had contracted into that moment. Taylor had been his constant, study partner, comic relief, the one person who understood his messy home life. Yet here she was, making a life-changing choice without him. For a second, relief flickered in his chest. He wouldn't have to bear that secret alone anymore. But it was snuffed out by helplessness, confusion, and a stirring he had never known: cold betrayal. He blinked and looked up at her. Taylor's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I just couldn't face everyone." Logan closed the paper and returned it silently, heart pounding so fiercely he thought it might tear free of his ribs. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Taylor's shoulders trembled. You're going to marry him? Taylor nodded, eyes shimmering. Cole's family can help. He's got connections with a good lawyer. I need help, Logan. I really do. The corridor felt too bright, too large. Logan shut his locker without a word and walked away. Footsteps echoing on linoleum. Taylor called after him, but he didn't stop. Now, pedaling into sunrise, Logan tried to untangle his thoughts. He could almost hear his mother's voice, urging him to focus on the scholarship test next month. But his brain rewound that locker room moment on a loop. He should have been angry, but his throat tightened with an ache more like grief. By the time he reached Cedar Falls High, cheeks flushed from the cold and adrenaline, he felt unsteady. Inside, the familiar buzz of morning chatter did nothing to calm him. On the second floor, he found his geometry classroom and slipped into a seat half a minute before the bell. Ms. Ramirez, his teacher, paused mid-sentence, gave him a knowing look, then resumed without comment. Logan stared at the whiteboard as Ms. Ramirez explained parabolas. The curve of a quadratic function, like a child's swing frozen at its highest point. He tried to follow her. He really did. But the words blurred. His mind kept drifting back to Taylor's message. The way her lips quivered. How she avoided his gaze when she said she was sorry. At lunchtime, Logan wandered into the courtyard. He hadn't eaten breakfast. The cold air made him lightheaded. He found an empty bench under the big oak tree near the track, its branches bare, skeletal against the pale sky. Pulling his jacket tight, he sat and closed his eyes. A scrunch of gravel startled him. He looked up to see Taylor, cheeks rimmed pink, carrying a tray with a half-eaten sandwich. She approached uneasily, standing a few feet away. I thought you might come here, she said softly, lifting her tray. I'm so sorry. Logan folded his arms. Why didn't you tell me sooner? His voice sounded hollow, even to his own ears. We've always been honest. Taylor's bottom lip trembled. I panicked. I was scared of what people would say and what my parents would do when they found out I was pregnant. I thought I could handle it alone. No, he blurted. You didn't think at all. Not about me. He huffed. Not about us. Taylor's eyes stung with tears. I know. She set the tray at his feet, and Saturday, Cole's family has money. He's going to pay for everything. They'll help with legal stuff for the baby. I thought it'd be best, but I screwed up. Logan stared at the bench boards where the paint was chipped. You ran away instead of asking for help. His voice cracked. You left me behind. Taylor reached out, fingernails tracing the bench edge. Logan, I'm sorry. He shook his head, chest tightening. I don't even know what to say. Taylor stood and walked away, tears slipping unheeded down her cheeks. Logan stayed on the bench long after she disappeared into the cafeteria doorway. The first bite of sandwich forgotten on the tray. He closed his eyes and took deep breaths, trying to stop the storm inside him. By the final bell, he felt hollow. The TV static in his head drowning out the mocking voices of classmates who whispered about Taylor's pregnancy. He trudged to his bike rack, slinging his backpack over the handle. He started to mount his bike, but then wavered. He replayed Taylor's words once more. I'm meeting Cole today after school. The image of her wedding to someone else, someone he barely knew, clawed at him like an animal. Without thinking, he kicked off hard, pedaling down Cedar Avenue faster than he intended, down past the sports fields and the empty baseball diamond. His breath came in sharp bursts as the pavement blurred beneath his tires. He didn't notice the rise in speed until his front wheel hit a frost-hidden pothole. The bike jerked. Logan's chest slammed into the handlebars. Time slowed. He saw the cold gray pavement rushing toward him. The world cracked open. He landed hard, the breath knocked out of him. Pain exploded in his ribs. A frantic pulse throbbed in his wrist where it had smashed against the metal. He tried to push up, but his vision swam and nausea rose. For a moment, he wondered if Taylor would even care. Then came the pain, clear, white-hot, and he forced his eyes open. The sky was a pale dome overhead. No one was around. His backpack lay twisted beside him. He gripped the bike frame, each breath serrating his lungs. Summoning what strength he had, he pulled himself up on shaking legs. His knee was scraped raw, blood dark against his faded jeans. His heart pounded as if trying to escape his chest. He took one step, then another, draping his arm over the bike. It barely supported him, but he walked. Behind him, at the edge of Cedar Falls' high property, a school bus rumbled to a stop. The doors opened with a hiss. A hand burst out, steadying him. "Hey, you alright?" It was Devin, a lacrosse teammate. Devin's firing green eyes studied him, concerned. Logan managed a short nod. He tried to steady his breathing. "I'll be fine." Devin stored his bike for him, then led him toward the bus. Logan knew his ribs were bruised, maybe cracked, and that he'd face both physical pain and the hollow ache in his heart for a long time to come. But for now, he climbed the bus steps and sat near the back, head leaning against the window. The wheels turned, carrying him away from Cedar Falls High, away from Taylor's confession and his own crashing despair. Outside the window, the sun turned frost-covered field silver. Logan closed his eyes against the glare, bracing himself for the ride home and the next chapter of a life suddenly upended. When Logan limped into the Miller household that afternoon, the air inside felt colder than the winter wind outside. He slung his backpack onto the stained couch, wincing as every shift reminded him of the scarlet road rash on his knee. He barely heard his mother's concerned questions, because upstairs, beneath the creaking floorboards, something far more dangerous was brewing. Catherine closed the door behind Logan and patted down the hall, voice gentle. "Are you hurt worse than this?" She gestured to his scraped jeans. He shrugged off her worry. "I'll ice it later," he said, avoiding her eyes. He knew deep down that the pain was more than physical. Below them, a high-pitched shriek cut through the house. Catherine froze. The sound had come from the corner where the old drafting table stood, a makeshift workspace for Jenna Ross, the owner of Bluebird Brew, who occasionally tutored Maddie in English. Last time Catherine had seen her, Jenna was cheerfully unloading boxes of pastries. Now Catherine's heart hammered. She realized immediately where that scream came from, Richard's basement lair, where he and other men gathered nightly for their poker games. Logan sank onto the couch. I'll be fine here," he mumbled. Before Catherine could answer, she heard the back door slam. Her breath caught. She exchanged a look with Logan and hurried toward the bottom of the stairs, every step thudding in her chest. At the foot of the stairs, she paused. A low growl rolled through the hallway like thunder before a storm. She pushed open the door to the basement. Her refuge became a cage. Tables scraped against each other, empty beer bottles littered the floor, and in the far corner stood Jenna, trembling, arms raised protectively over her face. Richard loomed over her, face flushed, knuckles white.
"Just one more
hand," he hissed through clenched teeth. Oblivious to his audience of 3 disinterested players and a single frightened woman, Jenna backed against an oil-stained wall. I told you, Richard, you lost," she stammered. "I can't cover another 50. Her voice quavered, but she refused to look away. The soft glow of a bare bulb overhead made her dark curls halo, like a crown of fear. Richard lunged forward. "You fool. You think I'm done?" He yanked at Jenna's arm, tension coiling in his muscles. "Don't lecture me about money," he snarled. His breath reeked of stale whiskey. "You heard me. I cover debts for one more round." Jenna shook her head, fighting tears. "My business can't afford it. I'm barely breaking even. If you keep pushing me," he shouted, "then die trying to pay me back." Before anybody could stop him, he raised his hand and struck Jenna across the face. The slap echoed like a gunshot. That was the crack Catherine heard. She whirled around, snapping off her coat and charging forward. "Richard," she screamed, her voice fracturing the bleak silence. She grabbed his shoulder. "Stop this.
Now."
Richard turned, dark eyes blazing. He shrugged Catherine's hand away, hard enough to send her staggering back. "Get out," he growled. "This isn't your business." Catherine steadied herself on the wall. Beneath her fear lay a fierce resolve. "It's my house. It's my family. This stops now." Richard's gaze flicked to Logan on the couch.
His jaw tightened.
Hatred and shame warred in his eyes. But he whirled back to Jenna, ignoring Catherine entirely. "I want my money," he snarled, advancing again. Jenna flinched. Catherine sprang between them, arms outstretched.
"No."
Her scream rattled the rafters. One of the men at the poker table finally stirred, a lanky figure named Pete. He stood and placed a tentative hand on Richard's shoulder.
"Richement."
"Take it easy." Richard spun on him with a roar. "Stay out of it." He shoved Pete back into his chair so hard that Pete crashed onto the floor, cards fluttering like wounded birds. Catherine's heart pounded. Logan rushed down the stairs, spotting Jenna's tear-streaked face. He lunged forward. "Stop it, Dad." Richard whirled, as if Logan's presence had resurrected a fiercer side. "Shut up, boy." He reared his fist, aimed not at cards, but at his own son. Logan shouted and ducked just in time. "Don't you touch him," Catherine shouted, pulling Logan aside. Yet Richard was beyond reason. In that moment, Jenna saw her chance. She bolted for the stairs, yanking open the heavy door. Catherine grabbed Richard's arm, wrenching him around, but he elbowed her away. Catherine hurtled into the wall, breath roaring in her ears. Richard staggered out of the basement and into the foyer. The sudden shift of gravity pulled flowers from a vase, showering petals across the tile. A faded welcome mat lay beneath his feet as he confronted his family, disheveled, frightened, desperate. Catherine reached him first. She seized his shoulders and looked up into his wild eyes. "Richard, this ends now. You're hurting us. You're hurting yourself." For the first time that night, the roar in his head quieted. His gaze wavered, mouth opening to reply. But all she saw in him was the broken man she had once married. He looked away, shoulders sagging. Catherine led him back to the basement entrance. "Get out of here," she said softly, though rage still trembled beneath her words.
"Go."
"Get fresh air." She wiped a smear of card dust from his jacket. He glared but obeyed, slipping through the door. The distant crack of the front door signaled his exit. Logan and Pete moved Jenna to sit on the couch, her cheek red and angry. She touched the bruise, trembling. "I'm so," Jenna began, voice soft. "Sure," Logan said, wrapping her in his jacket. "It's okay. You're safe now." He caught Catherine's eye on the landing, and she gave him a single nod, a fragile bond amid chaos. In the broken hush, cards lay splayed on the poker table like fallen soldiers. Empty bottles glimmered under the bulb, glittering reminders of a night spun out of control. Catherine turned to her children and Jenna. "I'm so sorry," she said, voice thick. "I'll call for help." She guided Logan toward the phone in the hallway. As she dialed, Catherine glanced back at the basement door. She realized that Richard's fury wasn't just about money. It was the storm inside him unleashed on everyone he loved. Tonight had stripped away any illusions. And in the shards, she caught a glimpse of a choice: to protect her family or watch them be crushed by his anger. The phone rang. Logan found his voice. 911? "Something's happened. Please send help." Sirens would come soon. But for Catherine, the real work had just begun. She needed to build walls strong enough to keep Richard's rage at bay and somehow patch the brokenness it left behind. The flashing red and blue light sliced through the Miller living room like cracks of electricity. Catherine pressed her palm to her throbbing temple as Logan clutched the phone, his voice tight with urgency. Jenna sat wrapped in a thick blanket, her cheeks swollen and bruised dark. Pete hovered nearby, nursing a sprained shoulder, while the distant wail of sirens grew louder. "I'm on Washington Avenue," Logan said, voice barely above a whisper. "Please hurry." Catherine dropped into a chair, knees weak. Her eyes flicked to the basement door, already swung open in haste. a dark hollow resting where Richard's poker games had once taken place. She steadied herself, mind racing. Logan injured, Jenna hurt, and Richard was still out there, somewhere, lost in his own fury. Sirens crescendoed, then faded as the ambulance barreled down the driveway and around the corner. EMTs spilled out, equipment in hand, building a protective ring around Jenna and Pete. Catherine felt an ache twist in her chest so sharp that she gasped. She wanted to find Richard, to drag him back inside, to force him to see the wreckage of his own making. But she knew better than to try. He was beyond reason tonight. "Mom," Logan murmured, voice trembling. He reached out, fingers brushing hers. "He's gone." Catherine froze, heart stopping. "What do you mean?" Logan's hand shook as he lifted his phone. "The dispatcher said they can't find him at the poker house. He must have wandered off." "Oh God," Catherine whispered, springing to her feet. He wasn't in his right mind. He could be anywhere. She grabbed her coat, emotion coiling into panic. "Pete," watched Jenna. "I'm going after him." Pete nodded, eyes wide. "Be careful." Outside, the night air stung Catherine's lungs. She sprinted to her car, old sedan but reliable, doors squeaking as she yanked them open. She fumbled for her keys, hands slick with sweat, and fired the engine. Headlights carved twin lanes of brightness through the dark. Washington Avenue loomed ahead, empty, but for a lone street lamp flickering overhead. Catherine pressed the gas, tires crunching gravel. She scanned the roadside. No Richard. She sped forward, corner by corner, her heart slamming against her ribs. She rounded a blind curve near Cedar Creek High and nearly rammed the brakes when she saw him. Richard, stumbling in the gutter, arms outstretched, shirt hanging open over a stained t-shirt. His hair was matted with sweat. He swayed as if on a ship's deck in a storm. "Richard!" Catherine screamed, slamming on the horn. The horn's blare echoed, but did nothing to steady his feet. He paused, head turning, blinking at the headlights, not recognizing her. Panic ripped through Catherine. She leapt from the car before it even stopped, sprinting toward him across the asphalt. A semi-truck rumbled toward them from the east, headlights harsh and blinding. Catherine flagged, but the driver, likely distracted by the dark and the empty road, didn't slow. Richard, unsteady and confused, lurched forward, stepping off the curb directly into the truck's path.
No.
Catherine's scream shattered the night. She dove forward, hands outstretched, but by the time she reached him, it was too late. The sickening crunch of metal and bone sounded like a gunshot. The truck's horn blared again, an agonized wail, as the driver slammed on the brakes. Catherine skidded to a halt, chest heaving, a surreal halo of spray from the truck's tires soaking her coat. In the pool of headlights lay Richard's body, limbs splayed at unnatural angles. Time fractured. Catherine felt a dizzying descent into silence. Nothing she saw made sense. The twisted bike frame lodged under the truck's front, the shattered glass glinting like broken stars, the truck's horn still droning. She looked down at Richard, chest rising and falling in shallow tremors, but not for long. His eyes lifelessly stared up at the flickering street lamp, mouth agape in a final, silent plea. She stumbled forward, pressing her hands to his chest, desperate for a pulse she knew wouldn't be there. Tears burned her eyes. Salt ran down her cheeks in hot rivers. A single thought hammered through her mind. How do you bury the man you once loved so fiercely? Behind her, the semi-driver jumped down, horror etched in trembling lines on his face. "Ma'am, oh my God, I'm so sorry," he stammered, backing away as if fearing Richard might suddenly rise. Catherine didn't hear him. She pressed her ear to Richard's chest, eyes squeezed shut, willing a heartbeat that never came. The flash of red and blue returned as police and a second ambulance arrived. 2 officers approached, glancing at Catherine with cautious sympathy. One knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Ramirez," he said gently. "We need to move you back. The paramedics will take over." Catherine peeled herself away, stumbling back. She watched through teary eyes as paramedics confirmed the worst. No signs of life. Their faces grim, they draped a silver foil blanket over Richard and began the somber ritual of covering his body. A detective sidled up, holding a small notebook. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked softly. "Catherine?" Catherine's throat tightened. She nodded, voice lost in the wail of sirens and the low hum of the street lamps. The detective cleared his throat.
I'm Detective Harris.
"I'm so sorry for your loss. Any chance you know why Mr. Miller was on the road?" Catherine's mind replayed the basement scene, Richard's apt words of fury, the broken pleadings of Jenna, her own warnings. She fought to speak through the sobs. He wandered off. He wasn't thinking, he shouldn't have been walking out there. Detective Harris ducked his head. "We'll include that in the report. Right now, would you like medical support? Paramedics can check you over." But Catherine barely noticed. She felt as if she were watching everything through thick glass. The world had tilted. The man who had terrorized them with his fits of rage now lay still, breathless. In an instant, the monster had vanished, leaving only a corpse and a million unanswered questions. Back at the Miller house, lights burned in every window. Inside, Logan sat on the edge of the couch beside Jenna, who wrapped her arms around his good arm as if seeking protection. Maddie hovered nearby, face drained of color, tears unfallen yet. Pete sat stiffly in a chair, dabbing at a bruise with a cold cloth. Catherine entered, drenched in streetlight, eyes red and glossed. The room fell silent. She drifted to the armchair opposite Logan, collapsing into it with the grace of someone who'd run a marathon in her grief. She looked at her children, spent shadows of themselves, and her chest constricted. Jenna rose, gingerly placing a hand on Catherine's knee. "I'm so sorry," she croaked. Catherine reached out, taking Jenna's hand, tears finally spilling free. "We're all sorry," she whispered. "But right now we need to be together." Maddie slumped onto the couch next to Logan, head on his good shoulder. He put an arm around her, his trembling hand coming to rest on Catherine's. For a moment, they sat huddled in shared pain, three souls bound by love and terrible loss. Outside, Washington Avenue lay silent once more, its slick pavement reflecting the glow of street lamps. A lone police cruiser sat nearby, its engine idling. Beyond the walls of the Miller home, the world continued, unaware of the sudden emptiness left in Richard Miller's wake. Inside, Catherine closed her eyes and let herself grieve. She had lost the man who had hurt her so deeply.
Now,
she would have to find the strength to pick up the pieces for her children, Maddie, Logan, and for herself. In that quiet moment after the storm, she realized the true depth of her burden: survival. The morning after Richard's death, Cedar Falls felt oddly hushed, like a breath held too long. Catherine Miller woke to an empty house, the sunlight etched through frosted windows, dust motes dancing in golden beams. In the stillness, she realized with a jolt that the man who had cast such long shadows over her family was gone for good. Her first clear thought: she needed to wake her children. She found Logan slumped at the kitchen table, head in his hands, textbooks splayed before him. His knee was wrapped in a cooling bandage, and coke from the ambulance ride left sticky tracks across the laminate. Maddie hovered by the stove, stacking waffles on a plate, eyes glassy. Catherine sat beside Logan, hand on his shoulder. "Honey, it's time to start," she said softly. He looked up, grief and guilt swirling in his dark eyes. Catherine squeezed his shoulder. "We'll make it through this, together." Maddie set plates before them, voice trembling. "What now, Mom?" Catherine inhaled the warm scent of maple syrup. "We go forward, one day at a time." She took the chair across from Logan. "We all have roles to play. Maddie, you said you had an idea for the shop." Maddie nodded, blinking back tears. "I talked to Mrs. Nguyen at Sweet Maple Cafe. They're looking to sell a few extra drinks, bubble tea, specialty lattes. Maybe I could start something small out front. Use that old cart Dad never fixed." Catherine's heart squeezed at the mention of Richard's name, but softened with relief. That could help with bills, she said. Let's talk details this afternoon. Across town, Sweet Maple Cafe's owner, Mrs. Nguyen, wiped down a row of gleaming pour-over machines. When Maddie arrived, uniform freshly pressed beneath her apron, Mrs. Nguyen ushered her behind the counter. I know it's been rough, dear, Mrs. Nguyen said kindly. Catherine's told me about your idea. I'd be honored to help you start a weekend stand. Maddie exhaled, voice catching. Thank you. Sirens, and everything went by so fast. I want to keep going. Dad would have hated it if we quit. Mrs. Nguyen smiled, reaching out to squeeze Maddie's hand. Then let's do it for him. Meanwhile, Logan found himself wandering the corridors of Cedar Falls Preparatory, a prestigious boarding school for academically gifted students. He'd won a partial scholarship for a science fair project on renewable energy, a paper he'd barely touched since Taylor's confession. Last night's tragedy threatened to snuff out his drive, but Catherine's words echoed, one day at a time. Inside the assistant headmaster's office, Mr. Cooper offered a quiet smile. Logan, your work on the wind turbine model was outstanding. We want to offer you a full scholarship. Logan, voice unsteady, managed a nod. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Mr. Cooper leaned forward. Life deals us hardships. It's what we do afterward that defines us. He placed a hand on Logan's shoulder. Your father's passing.
I'm sorry.
But I see promise in you. Promise that can uplift not only you, but your family and community. We'll support you. Logan left the office with a mix of pride and sorrow. Catherine's belief in him had never wavered, and now an entire institution was investing in his future. He resolved then to push through the pain, not to erase it, but to honor his father's memory by transforming suffering into strength. That weekend, the Miller driveway bustled with activity. Maddie's grandmother had borrowed Richard's old folding cart, painted faded green, and set it up beneath a striped canopy. Catherine and Logan helped arrange jugs of iced tea, cups of bubble tea with pastel-colored tapioca pearls suspended beneath whipped cream, and to-go cartons of egg sandwiches. A hand-lettered sign proclaimed, Sweet Maple Express, bubble tea, and more. The first customer, Mrs. Jennings from 3 doors down, arrived with a warm loaf of sourdough tucked under her arm. She hugged Catherine. Word spread through the neighborhood, and soon a line snaked along Maple Grove. Maddie's eyes shone as she poured teas, adding rainbow straws and offering free samples. Logan stood by with donation jars for local youth scholarships, educating curious patrons on the benefits of clean energy, a passion born during his science fair. Catherine moved among them like a conductor, smiling as mothers chatted over steaming lattes and teenagers raved about exotic flavors. Her voice, once worn thin by late-night fears, carried warmth and confidence. This pop-up stand was more than a fundraiser. It was the first bright bloom after a harsh frost. By the day's end, the cart had raised enough to cover the rent for the next 2 months and generated seed money for Maddie's own permanent storefront. Catherine hugged her daughter through tears of pride as Logan counted donations. Mom, he said quietly, we did it.
She tapped his hand.
We did it together. Monday morning arrived on silver wings of dawn. Catherine, Maddie, and Logan filed into the newly expanded Harper's Market, a grocery store newly managed by Catherine and her new husband, David Harper. The aisles gleamed with fresh produce and local honey displays, testament to David's business acumen and Catherine's unshakable resolve. David welcomed customers with cheerful banter. Behind the counter, Catherine balanced the books and managed deliveries, her skills honed by countless early mornings at Maple Grove Market. Maddie worked the front, her sweet maple bubble tea machine humming beside the register, while Logan set up a small kiosk promoting the now official Cedar Falls Youth Scholarship Fund. By lunchtime, the market buzzed with chatter. Locals raved about the bubble tea. Students exchanged friendly jabs over Logan's wind turbine pamphlets. Neighbors admired Catherine's fresh garden vegetables and David's handcrafted jams. The family had transformed tragedy into community triumph. Late that afternoon, Catherine paused in an aisle of hand-painted signs and local produce. She took in the sight of her children, grown a little too fast, smiling and laughing, determination glinting in their eyes. She felt a swell of gratitude and hope. The past months had tested them, forced them into depths of despair, but out of that darkness, they had forged a new path. Some nights, Catherine still woke to phantom sounds of Richard's enraged footsteps or the echo of the truck's horn. The grief remained, an undertow she navigated each day with quiet courage. But for the first time, she no longer felt alone in the struggle. Her children rallied by her side, and a new husband lent steady support. That evening, as the market closed and the sweet maple cart was stowed away, Catherine gathered her family on the front steps. The sky blazed with sunset, pink and orange ribbons overhead. She wrapped an arm around David, one around Maddie, and Logan leaned in close. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing." Maddie grinned. "We're in this together, Mom." Logan nodded, shoulders back. "And we're only getting started." David pressed her hand. "Cedar Falls isn't ready for what we can do next." Catherine closed her eyes, breathing in the crisp air of promise. In that moment, she knew they would carry the lessons of loss with them, like seeds woven into their hearts, so they could grow gardens of hope, resilience, and renewal for Cedar Falls and beyond. Spring arrived in Cedar Falls with a riot of color. Tulips erupted along sidewalk cracks, and cherry blossoms dusted the air like pink snow. For Catherine, the season carried fresh meaning. It was time to move into her new home with David Harper. Their cottage sat just off Maple Grove Road, a handsome two-story house painted dove gray with white trim. David had spent weekends repainting shutters, rebuilding the front porch, and installing raised garden beds. Inside, the scent of pine floors and fresh paint mingled with Catherine's favorite lilies, which bloomed in cheerful bouquets on every windowsill. On a sun-washed Saturday, Catherine stood at the front door with Maddie and Logan, hearts fluttering beneath spring dresses and crisp polos. David appeared at the top of the stairs, brimmed Bradley's straw hat in hand, and a grin that rivaled the morning sun. "Welcome home," he said, voice warm as toast. Catherine's chest tightened. This was a new beginning, and she felt both hopeful and tenderly cautious. She gave David's hand a gentle squeeze. "It's beautiful." Maddie darted inside first, squealing as she raced through the living room. Plump throw pillows coordinated with pastel walls, and an armoire displayed local ceramics and David's collection of antique cookbooks. A framed photo of the Miller family pop-up stand at Sweet Maple Express sat on the mantel, reminder of the journey they'd traveled. Logan lingered on the threshold, eyes wide. He nudged his mother. "Did Dad ever have it this nice?" Catherine's throat caught. She shook her head and smiled, remembering chipped paint and broken floorboards. "No, honey, not even close." At the top of the stairs, David guided them into Catherine's new study, a bright room with a bay window overlooking the back garden. Catherine's writing desk, handed down from her own grandmother, sat beneath the window. She ran her fingers over its smooth surface. "This is perfect," she whispered. David wrapped his arm around her. "I wanted you to have a place where you can breathe." The next room hosted Maddie's bubble tea station. Customized shelving held clear glass jars of colorful tapioca pearls, and a sleek counter housed the bubble tea machine. Maddie beamed at her domain. "I can't wait to reopen Sweet Maple Express out front," she said. Logan's corner was down the hall, a compact at-home workshop with a desktop 3D printer and engineering textbooks stacked neatly. A poster of his wind turbine prototype hung above the desk. When he switched on the printer's light, his face glowed with pride. "I'm going to refine it so I can show Mr. Cooper at Cedar Falls Preparatory." That evening, neighbors drifted in, a potluck housewarming of smiling faces bearing casseroles, pies, and bouquets. Mrs. Jennings delivered her famous apple crisp. Mr. Patel from down the street brought butter chicken samosas. The Miller's new pastor from Cedar Falls Community Church offered a rustic wildflower arrangement. As guests mingled, Catherine moved through the rooms, marveling at how seamlessly laughter and conversation filled every corner. She overheard someone ask David how he and Catherine met. He told the story quietly, but with a playful wink, how he'd stopped by the Sweet Maple pop-up for bubble tea, only to find Catherine in the driver's seat, orchestrating everything with effortless grace. He challenged her to a taste test, her classic Earl Grey against his experimental rosemary-infused latte, and the rest, as they say, was history. Catherine caught David's eye from across the kitchen island and raised her glass. He returned her look, lifting his own in a silent toast. Hers was a life reassembled from shards of the past. But tonight it shimmered whole. Later, when the last neighbor had bid goodnight, Catherine and David settled on the front porch swing, cool spring breezes rustling the blossoms overhead. Maddie and Logan danced around the yard before retreating inside at bedtime. David draped a shawl over Catherine's shoulders. "I know this house can't erase everything," he said softly. "But I hope it can guard what matters most, your family's happiness." Catherine leaned against him, breath sweet with moonlit jasmine.
"It already has," she said.
"You already have." Inside, their children tumbled through the hallway, pausing to tiptoe by the study door. Catherine and David peeked through peepholes to see Maddie and Logan high-five under the bubble tea lights, siblings united by determination and unexpected purpose. That night, Catherine lay awake in her new bedroom, listening to the creak of settling beams and the soft whir of wind chimes in the garden. The memories of basement brawls and Washington Avenue flashed behind her eyelids, but they felt distant now, shadows in a house built on sunlight and second chances. When dawn broke, Catherine rose and stood at her writing desk. She opened a fresh journal, its first page titled, "Our Future Begins Today." With a steady hand, she wrote, "Here, in this house, we choose hope every morning. No matter what storms come, we will face them together, stronger, kinder, and more certain than ever that we belong." She smiled, closing the journal. In her new hearth, the embers of her family's love glowed bright, and she knew the fire would never go out. Dr. Olivia Carter had always believed in precision. Each morning, she donned her crisp white coat, adjusted her stethoscope, and methodically reviewed her patient files before donning a confident smile. At Riverside Medical Center, she was known for her calm under pressure and gentle bedside manner. Her husband, Michael Reynolds, a driven tech entrepreneur, admired her composure and celebrated every milestone in her career as though it were his own. That Thursday morning, their routine unraveled in a heartbeat. Olivia stepped out of their sunlit kitchen, humming a cheerful tune while clinging a bowl of oatmeal before heading to the car. Michael slipped a tie over his crisp dress shirt, pecking her on the cheek. "Big day?" he asked, voice warm. Their first pregnancy checkup was scheduled, Olivia at 8 weeks, earlier than expected. But both had decided they couldn't wait to see their baby's heartbeat. Olivia slid into the passenger seat, silently thankful. They'd dreamed of a child for years, navigating fertility treatments and setbacks together. At last, it was happening. Michael's hand found hers, offering reassurance. "We'll get a good look at our little one," he said softly. On the drive, traffic snaked along West Elm Boulevard, but they were in no rush. Olivia and Michael chatted about nursery colors and baby names. She favored Charlotte or Everett. He leaned toward names like Caleb or Madeline. Their laughter mingled with the hum of tires, and for a precious moment, time held still. They arrived at Riverside with 10 minutes to spare. In the waiting room, pastel walls and cheerful abstract paintings promised comfort. Olivia signed in, and Michael sat beside her, fingers drumming on his knee. When her name was called, Olivia rose with a happy flutter in her chest. Inside the ultrasound suite, the technician guided Olivia onto the exam table. The machine whirred to life, gentle gels smoothed across her abdomen. Olivia's breath caught as the screen flickered to grainy life. Michael slid into a chair beside her. The room was silent save for the soft beeps of the machine. Then there it was, a tiny flicker of movement, a heartbeat too fast to count. Warmth bloomed in Olivia's heart. She whispered, "There you are." Michael's eyes glistened as he met Olivia's gaze. "We're parents," he said, voice thick. Olivia squeezed his hand, tears brimming. All her fears, loss, disappointment, the haunting memory of friends who'd tried and failed, melted away. But later that afternoon, at the hospital cafeteria, an urgent page hijacked Olivia's elation. A critical trauma case had just arrived, a multi-car pileup on Interstate 22, victims in dire need. Without hesitation, she excused herself, trading her baby joy for life-or-death stakes. Michael hovered, concern creasing his brow. "Go," he urged. "Save lives." He watched her vanish down the corridor, pride mingling with anxiety. At the scene, Olivia orchestrated care for 2 drivers and 3 passengers, her phone buzzing insistently in her lab coat pocket. Finally, 3 hours later, she rounded on her last patient. The judges of her time. She'd left lunch cold and Michael alone waiting. Heart hammering, she dashed back to her office. Seconds later, her phone lit up with Michael's name. She answered breathlessly. "Michael?" There was a crackle of static. "Liv," his voice trembled. There's been an accident." Olivia froze. "What?" "I was on my way back, a truck, it fishtailed. I swerved. Static. I'm fine, but the car isn't." Olivia sank against the wall, hand slipping from the phone. "Oh, God." Michael returned at his car, sides crumpled, airbags deployed, yet he stepped out unharmed. The truck driver's face mirrored shock. Michael gave his name, phone number, then hurried to meet Olivia in the ER. When she found him, he stood paler than usual, clothes streaked with grit. Relief washed over her, until she saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. "Are you okay?" she whispered. He nodded, voice tight.
Fine.
Just scared." Olivia hugged him, pressing her cheek to his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. But the panic lingered. That night, they lay in bed, pillows pressed close. Michael kissed Olivia's belly, a tender gesture, but she could see shadows beneath his gaze. "I'm sorry," he said, "for leaving you today." She stroked his hair. "You had a right to be here for me, too." He exhaled. "I know." They fell asleep tangled together, but neither dreamed of their little one. Over the next week, Olivia's pregnancy glow drained as work consumed her. At Riverside, she managed back-to-back emergencies, sleepless shifts cueing exhaustion. Michael slipped into more meetings, barely glimpsed amid business contracts and investor lunches. Their texts dwindled from loving emojis to terse updates, survived triple bypass. Pitch at 3 p.m. Need coffee. One evening, Olivia arrived home after a double shift, hair pinned in a hasty bun, shoulders tense. She found the house dark except for glimmers from his laptop screen. Michael sat at the kitchen island, typing feverishly. "How was your day?" she asked, voice soft. He barely looked up. "Busy." She opened her mouth, but he drilled back to his screen, fingers tapping the keys like machine gunfire. Hurt flickered inside her. She retreated to the fridge, grabbing a carton of milk for tea. Sipping quietly in the living room, she glanced at his chair, piled with presentation binders and investor proposals. The computer fan whirred, humming like a distant storm. She stared at the empty seat across from him and felt a loneliness widen inside. 2 weeks later, as they prepared for Olivia's 20-week ultrasound, she felt Michael's absence keenly. She padded into the nursery, half-painted in pale sage, her hands trembling. The tiny crib stood assembled, waiting for a mattress. She smoothed stray paint flecks off the rail. "Not ready," she whispered. At that moment, Michael stepped in, tie loosened around his neck.
"Leave."
He hesitated, eyes haunted. "I'm sorry I've been distant."
He reached for her hand.
"I had to seal the Series B funding. It's critical." Olivia's stomach tightened. She studied him. "And after that?" He ran his thumb gently over her knuckles. "Then I'll be here for good." She nodded slowly. Hope flickered, but a soft doubt lingered. On the day of the ultrasound, Michael didn't come. Olivia sat in the waiting room, her coat wrapped tight, heart flickering with apprehension. She texted, 20-week scan at 10 a.m. See you there? No reply. She sent again. Nothing. Her phone buzzed, but it was a reminder from the cafe down the street. Try our limited edition pumpkin spice latte. At noon, Olivia's name was called. She climbed onto the exam table. Baby bump on display. The technician's hands were routine as she traced Olivia's midline. The screen flickered, but when it settled, no heartbeat appeared. Olivia's breath caught. Her eyes flicked to the technician's masked face. What? She whispered. The technician's brows knit.
I'm sorry, Dr. Carter.
I don't detect a heartbeat. Olivia's world tilted. She blinked tears away, mind blank. The familiar hum of medical equipment pressed in. The screen displayed a tiny form, still. She slid off the table without a word, phone falling from her hand. She stumbled down the corridor, past open doors where other pregnant women smiled at their screens. Ahead, a garbage bin shimmered with half-empty soda cans. She retched. The fluorescent lights spun around her. Finally, she collapsed behind a potted plant, knees to chest, hands clamped over her ears. The hallway emptied except for her quiet sobs. Seconds or hours passed. She straightened, took a shaky breath, and stood. She would have to break the news, to herself first, then Michael. She would have to find the strength she gave others daily. As she planted her feet and adjusted her scrubs, the weight of motherhood bore down, but fatherhood, it seemed, had been left behind. Michael returned that evening, late, bleary-eyed. He found Olivia in their bedroom, suitcase at her feet. Her hair was undone, her face pale and hollow. She didn't look up. He dropped his laptop bag. Liv, are you okay? His hands trembled. Olivia's voice was flat. I lost the baby today. He blinked. What, how? Panic snaked through him like ice. Why didn't you call me? She swallowed once. You didn't answer. You didn't come. Michael's chest tightened. He couldn't finish. Olivia pressed a hand to her belly. It's gone. A searing pain crossed her face. I wanted you here. He knelt beside her, but she shrank away. Please, she whispered. Don't touch me. The phone rang, her ringtone, but she let it slide off the nightstand. Michael answered it automatically. Reynolds. It's Paul, said a familiar voice. Paul Chan was Michael's venture partner. We've got a breach in due diligence. Lawyers are on us. Can you come in tonight? Michael froze. Eyes flicking between Paul's name on the screen and Olivia's tear-streaked face. He muted the call and closed his eyes. Then he swiped to end it. No, he said quietly. I'm here now. But despite his words, he reached instead for his phone. Olivia watched with cold clarity as he texted under the covers. She pulled away, crawling to the far edge of the mattress. The distance between them yawned wider than any chasm before. In the weeks that followed, Olivia dove into work at Riverside, bearing her grief in trauma cases and C-sections. Michael's presence in their home grew rarer, always tied to conference calls, networking dinners, and travel. They shared the same address but lived in parallel universes. One night, Olivia discovered an email from Paul. Your presence is critical at tomorrow's investor meeting. It's go/no-go. The message stung. He had prioritized money over their loss. She closed the laptop with a snarl, tears of fury and pain mingling. She knew, then, she could no longer stand side by side with someone who abandoned her in her most vulnerable hour. She sent Michael a text. I need space. I'm moving out. No melodrama, just 5 words. Her heart pounded as she hit send. His reply came instantly. Liv, please don't do this. She didn't respond. She packed a duffel bag, scrubs, essentials, and a faded pair of slippers. In the soft glow of dawn, she slipped out, leaving an empty coffee mug on the nightstand. That morning, Olivia moved into a small rental cottage near Riverside. Its white picket fence and single rose bush seemed gentle, a safe harbor amid turmoil. She hung a welcome sign on the door. Dr. O's Sanctuary. Inside, she cleared a corner for a second pregnancy test, just to confirm, but disappointed hopes prevented her from taking it. Across town, Michael returned home to silence and an empty bed. On the nightstand lay and in the center of his emptiness, the absent heartbeat of their child echoed with the magnitude of what he had lost. Not just a baby, but a partner in a journey he no longer recognized. Snow still clung to the eaves of her little white cottage when Olivia Carter awoke the next morning. Through the frosted windowpane, dawn's pale light painted the room in delicate pastels. She sat up in bed, wrapped in the soft flannel sheets provided by her kindly landlord, and exhaled a breath she felt she'd held for months. Today, she would visit Emily. 8-year-old Emily Bradford had become Olivia's unexpected anchor during the storm of her marriage's collapse. Olivia first met Emily when the little girl arrived at Riverside Medical Center. Traumatized by an attempted abduction, caring for Emily's wounds, a literal tapestry of fear and confusion, Olivia realized her own need for purpose and began providing emotional support. Emily blossomed under Olivia's gentle guidance, and in return, Olivia felt the steady warmth of a mother's pride. That morning, Olivia dressed warmly and made oatmeal for herself before heading out in the crisp winter air. She paused at her doorstep, tugged her scarf close, and promised herself, "I will keep loving, in spite of everything." Emily's foster mother, Mrs. Bradford, answered the door of her cozy suburban home with a welcoming smile. "Dr. Carter," she exclaimed, "Emily's been asking about you all week." Emily emerged from the living room in pink bunny slippers, cheeks rosy from the cold. She threw her arms around Olivia. "Dr. Olivia," she squealed, "I missed you so much." Olivia hugged her tightly. "I missed you too, sweetheart." She knelt to Emily's height. "How is my brave girl?" Emily beamed. "I'm playing violin now. Mrs. James says I'm the best in class. And I baked these cookies," she added, pressing a small plate of heart-shaped sugar cookies into Olivia's hands. "For you." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. She accepted the cookies with a gentle nod. "Thank you, Emily. You're so talented." They settled at the kitchen table with hot cocoa, marshmallows bobbing like tiny snowdrifts, and chatted about school and violin recitals. Olivia listened with full attention, delighting in Emily's infectious enthusiasm. For the first time in months, Olivia felt truly present, her heart unburdened by stale sorrow. That afternoon, as Olivia walked home, her mobile buzzed with a text from Michael. "Can we talk? I'm at the coffee shop on Elm and Fifth." Her thumb hovered over reply. Memories of the hurt and abandonment flashed. The ultrasound room's sterile lights, Michael's absence when she lost their baby, his prioritization of work over their grief. Yet beneath those wounds lay the echo of their love, once so powerful they had imagined it indestructible. Olivia typed a single word: yes. Michael sat in the corner of Elm and Fifth Cafe, hands wrapped around a steaming cappuccino. He wore the same charcoal suit that had become his second skin, tailored and precise, every cuff and crease in place. But his eyes, once bright with ambition, looked hollow and haunted. When Olivia pushed through the door, he stood impulsively. "Olivia," he said, voice catching. She remained standing, taking in the familiar swirl of coffee beans and the murmur of conversations. Finally, she sat across from him, steepling her fingers. "Thank you for asking me to meet." Michael closed his eyes, mouthing a silent apology. When he opened them, he forced a small smile. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Olivia studied him, noting the tightness in his jaw and the slight tremor in his hands. "Me too," she said softly. He took a breath. "I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for being absent when you needed me most." Pain flickered across his face. "I was scared of the baby, of losing control, of failing. So I buried myself in work instead of leaning on you." Olivia's heart softened. She still felt the ache of abandonment, but hearing him name his fear made his actions human rather than monstrous. She exhaled slowly. "I understand fear," she said. "But when you turned away, I felt completely alone." Tears welled in Michael's eyes. He reached across the table. "I know I hurt you. I can't take that back." His voice trembled. But I want to try to make things right. For us. His voice cracked and he swallowed. I still love you, Olivia. Her chest fluttered with old longing, laced with caution. Forgiveness felt daunting, an act of courage rather than weakness. She met his gaze steadily. If you want forgiveness, you'll have to earn it. She leaned back, pulling her scarf closer. Show me you can put us, our family first. Michael nodded, relief and determination mingling on his face. I will live. I promise. Over the next weeks, Michael's actions spoke louder than words. He arranged his schedule so that he left the office by 5 p.m. every evening. Unaided phone calls to investors stopped after 7 p.m. And he even installed a voicemail greeting explicitly stating his family hours. He surprised Olivia with homemade dinners at her cottage, and they shared evening walks, bundled in coats against winter's chill. One Thursday night, he arrived with 2 cups of hot chocolate and an armful of fresh lilies, her favorite. And I promised myself these blooms would last until spring, he said, eyes hopeful. Olivia accepted the flowers, inhaling their sweet fragrance. They're beautiful, she said. Over the next hour, they sat by the fireplace, Emily's sugar cookies toasted in the oven for an indulgent snack. Michael listened as Olivia happily recounted Emily's latest violin recital. In turn, Michael shared stories from his office, light-hearted anecdotes about his team cracking a tough problem, typically the type of tale he'd once dominated with business jargon but now told to entertain Olivia. Their laughter grew genuine and soft. That night, Michael walked Olivia home. In the glow of street lamps, they paused. Frost crystals sparkled on bare branches. Olivia looked up, breath misting. Thank you, she whispered, for choosing to come back. He slipped her hand into his. Thank you for giving me the chance. They paused before her cottage door. A gentle hush settled around them. Michael leaned in, brushing his lips over hers in a quiet kiss, an unhurried promise under winter's moon. Spring's first thaw hinted at new life, and with it came the promise of rebirth in Olivia and Michael's relationship. One cool evening, Michael led Olivia to the rooftop garden of their apartment building, an urban oasis where tulip bulbs pushed through planters and fairy lights glimmered overhead. Olivia's breath caught. I didn't know they opened the roof. Michael smiled. It's our little secret spot. He reached out and took her hand. Olivia, I know I don't deserve to call you my wife right now, but he retrieved a small velvet box from his coat pocket and opened it to reveal a simple diamond solitaire ring. Will you marry me for the second time? This time, I vow to be the partner you need, to honor the family we envisioned. Tears sparkled in Olivia's eyes as Emily's giggles drifted up from the courtyard below. Emily had tagged along and now peeked around a corner, covering her mouth with delight. Olivia laughed and pressed her hand to her chest. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They sealed their renewed vows with a kiss beneath the chandelier of stars, petals of tulip bulbs softly brushing their ankles. A month later, at Riverside Chapel, an intimate venue with vaulted wooden beams and stained glass windows, their second wedding took place. The guest list was small: Olivia's medical colleagues, Michael's closest friends, and most importantly, Emily, playing flower girl in a pale lavender dress. Catherine Miller, having become Olivia's mentor in motherhood, gave a heartfelt reading. A passage about the resilience of the human heart, likening it to spring bulbs buried under snow, only to bloom brighter than ever. Maddie and Logan attended, their eyes shining with empathy and joy for their friend's happiness. When Olivia walked down the aisle, pale blush gown flowing like sunrise, her gaze found Michael's, and all doubts melted away. Emily scattered petals with gleeful abandon, and Michael's vow to cherish and uphold our family's new beginnings was met with tears and applause. That night, they danced to a slow acoustic guitar rendition of Landslide, remembering how life's changes had made them stronger. Emily leaned against Olivia, sleepy and content, and the couple realized their family had been reborn, more honest and united than before. 8 months later, Olivia awoke at dawn to a dull ache. The the first real sign that labor was near. Michael, newfound steadfast anchor, rushed to pack her hospital bag without a single sigh. Emily, in her hand-me-down scrubs, insisted on coming along, clutching a plush bunny for her soon-to-be little brother. They arrived at Riverside with nervous excitement. Physicians and nurses, Olivia's colleagues, lined the hallway to cheer her on. Michael squeezed her hand as she wheeled past, tears of pride and anticipation glinting in his eyes. Hours of contractions, breathing exercises, and the steady encouragement of her team culminated in a triumphant cry. "It's a boy." The family gathered. Michael wept as he held baby Jacob's tiny hand. Emily peered from behind her mother's gown, whispering, "Hello, Jacob." Catherine and her children, Maddie and Logan, arrived to celebrate. Catherine pressed a hand to her chest, blinking back tears. "He's perfect," she said softly. Maddie grinned. "Family just keeps growing." Logan nodded, his usual reserve dissolving into warmth. "Congrats, Uncle Michael." Michael laughed through tears. "Thanks, buddy." Emily bounded forward, arms outstretched. "Mommy, can we go home now? I want to show him his bunny." At the Harper home, the living room overflowed with fresh bouquets and baby gear. Jacob's crib stood beside Emily's, ready for the next generation of bedtime stories. In the soft lamplight, the Harpers and Carters gathered, Catherine and David, Maddie and Logan, Olivia and Michael, and of course, Emily cuddling her stuffed bunny. Olivia looked around at the smiling faces, friends who'd become family, a husband who'd chosen her over ambition, and 2 children whose futures glowed bright. Michael took her hand, eyes reflecting the glow of family photos drifting across the mantel. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he murmured. Olivia squeezed his fingers. "We're the luckiest family alive." Emily yawned, pressing her sleepy head to Olivia's shoulder. Jacob nestled against Michael's chest, his newborn face loosening into contented sighs. Maddie poured cocoa for everyone. Logan discovered Jacob's first rattle, shaking it gently in wide-eyed wonder. Catherine offered a final toast. A mug of warm apple cider passed around. "To forgiveness," she said, voice firm with emotion. "And to second chances. May we never take love for granted again." They drank, eyes moistened, and the warm laughter that followed wrapped around the room like a cozy blanket. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, silvery flakes drifting past the window pane. Inside, hearts glowed bright as the hearth's embers, a testament to resilience, compassion, and the infinite power of love. In that moment, they weren't defined by loss or regret, but by the promise of every sunrise and every new story waiting to unfold. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.